Good morning, everyone. So, Mark, you and I have traded spaces because you started your career in journalism and now work in development. I started my career in development and now work in journalism. Which of us has done it right, you think?
We've both done it right because you need
Okay.
both. You need to be able to shine a sharp spotlight in journalism on how critical development is. And I think I took my journalism training to help focus on how do you actually make sure development is focused on real, measurable, tangible outcomes and not just a lot of what we have too much of at the UN this week, words.
Words, okay, great. So we'll use few words and get to a lot of outcomes in this conversation. But today's theme, connectivity, there's a way to look at it and say, okay, this is really about Sustainable Development Goal number 9. It's about industry, infrastructure, and innovation. But that's not how you see it at the Gates Foundation. You see connectivity, I think, more as an enabler, right? Could you speak about that?
Yeah, it's both and. So at the foundation, we are constantly looking at where innovation can really have a transformative impact on scaling up interventions that are going to help the poorest and most vulnerable on the planet. And that's a particular need right now, as we've heard, where the world is struggling to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. Mm-hmm. And digital connectivity in particular, we believe, has the potential to be a transformative platform that really bends that curve in a fundamental way, because it is the critical building block that we're going to be able to do through AI and other tools, layer on services, financial services, as you just heard about, but also a range of other interventions from education to healthcare. So I think there's a lot of hype. In this case, the hype is deserved, provided we focus on the right investments.
So let's speak about the hype, because I remember, 10 years ago when I was working in sub-Saharan Africa on development, there was a lot of talk about the continent leapfrogging in terms of technology, and being able to get this population rapidly online. A dozen years on, 3 billion people still offline worldwide. I find myself curious, is there always going to be some residual percentage of the population that is offline? Or is it possible to imagine a future, particularly with AI, where you really have everyone connected?
Oh, we absolutely believe there is a future where you can get everyone connected. The point with any technology, and digital connectivity first, and remember, digital is not AI. Digital is a platform on which you can then layer on other services, including what we hope is the vast potential of AI. The point is, with any new technology, and we're definitely seeing it with AI, the benefits of it will go disproportionately to the wealthiest. First, the wealthiest countries, then the wealthiest people within low and middle income countries, unless there is a degree of intentionality by governments, by multilaterals, by philanthropies like ourselves, where we can use our resources to actually incentivize and require. You need to have applications. You need to have requirements that mandate low-cost access towards online, whether it's in a schoolroom, whether it's in a primary healthcare facility, whether it's a banking system or structure. And then you can drive down the cost of that connectivity to really very low levels that then can become that platform. But it requires intentionality. It's not going to happen on its own. If you just leave the markets to do it, and my boss, Bill Gates, is a big believer in free markets, but will acknowledge the markets alone will not make sure those benefits come down to the full critical mass that we need.
Which governments have you seen have that intentionality as you're out working?
Well, globally, one of the real leaders, and we've worked with them for really over the last 15 years plus, has been India. Mm-hmm. And India really did do a pioneering digital identity platform on which they've layered up a set of financial and other services, and now education and healthcare, and we've continued to work with that, and that's required a strong regulatory framework, a strong digital identity platform, and then an array of services and incentives and structures to make sure those services are available for the poorest. And we've actually seen that now rolling out across a number of African countries. I was recently in Ethiopia just a couple of months ago. They're rolling out a big, ambitious new digital identity scheme, which is actually built off an open source platform called MOSIP, which we, the foundation, and other partners have helped it. There are over 25 countries, a majority of them African, but also ranging from Morocco and the Philippines, who are using those platforms. And then once you create that infrastructure, you've kind of got to look through what it is, how can you use digital government payments to try and actually put people, particularly women, online and connected. And once that connectivity exists, you can start to layer on the other services.
So when you think about that, I wonder 20 years from now how we're going to look back at the pandemic, which has been kind of a great wake-up call for these digital public infrastructure programs in countries that had identity, ability to track identities, bank accounts, et cetera. You were able to disseminate support. You were able to do tracking for healthcare. You were able to provide virtual education to students. How much has that really accelerated or lit a fire under the governments, particularly that you're working with, and the innovators that you hope to make grants to?
Well, first on the pandemic, it's important to acknowledge the pandemic has had a massive adversarial impact on global health and development. That when we look back at the Gates Foundation and we put out an annual goalkeepers report, we had an event last night. I encourage all of you to go and have a look at it. Just look up goalkeepers and you'll see the report. In this case, it highlights nutrition. But we originally developed that report after the launch of the Sustainable Development Goals because the world didn't understand how much progress was happening. And we wanted to identify those stories of progress and show this is a world, we live in a world where preventable child mortality more than halved between 2000 and 2020, from over 10 million deaths a year to under 5 million deaths a year. We saw massive improvements in extreme poverty reduction, and these were global improvements. These were across the continents of Africa, Latin America, and Asia. We now look back, COVID was a moment where that progress stalled and has not recovered.
Still to this day.
Still to this day. The world has not reached the vaccination rates it had in 2019 in 2023. Over 60 countries, many of them in Africa, still have per capita incomes below 2019 levels. At a time, no high-income countries has that. And that's partly because the knock-on effect of that, with resources, the lack of resources, that rich countries were able to borrow heavily of very rich capital markets, which lower-income countries weren't able to do, and exhausted their resources, and you see the fiscal challenges. So that's the bad news. The silver lining, just to be clear, has been that it did precipitate a big focus on enhancing digital connectivity, trying to get basic payments to low-income countries. We had, dozens of countries actually rapidly accelerated, and hundreds of millions of people came online for the first time. That connection now exists. The opportunity we have now is take that. The baseline shouldn't just be for government payments. It should be to build this array of much broader health and development and financial services going forward.
And where do you think, it totally makes sense, and very much understand kind of the way in which the pandemic is an overall setback and a potential accelerant in this vertical. Where does the solve come from? Does it come from the likes of the Gates Foundation? Does it come from governments? Or does it come, from tech Zions, Zuckerbergs, the Strives, the Mo Ibrahims, and their philanthropy? And of course, you're going to tell me it's all of them, but stack rank them in the next 5 to 10 years.
So it is all of them. So in terms of the stack rank, the one thing the private sector is doing, and the big private sector companies, is that's where the technology accelerants are happening. So the models of AI, the scale, the expense of it really requires deep-pocketed private sector actors to be. But they are maximizing and looking to maximize profits. They're marketing it to businesses. They're marketing it to high-income countries. Where you need philanthropies like ours, and obviously we're one that's very focused on technology, and where you need governments, is to come in and then layer on top of that. Governments can put in place regulatory incentives that are to seek to make sure that those AI benefits and tools, when they come, are going to be made available to tourists. That's exactly what happened in the financial inclusion space. Many banks would not naturally go and look to try and develop those bank accounts or other tools and payments for the very poorest, had it not been a requirement from many governments. Once they're in place, you actually show, and there is a profitability, there are real markets available, these become self-sustaining. Philanthropies like ours, and we're doing some extensive investments now across whether it's agricultural tools that are providing better weather forecasting and credit tools for smallholder farmers, whether it is education tools where you can provide much more customized numeracy and literacy programs for children, whether it's primary healthcare tools. We can take the risk, because it's difficult for governments with scarce resources to take risks, to prove models, because not all models work. Which ones work? Once we do that, then we have to go back to the government, some of the multilateral stakeholders, and say, It's your job to scale this up because this is going to be very high impact. So you can link the three together, but we need to do it simultaneously. Historically, there's always been a big lag. Those benefits have taken 20, 30 years to reach low and middle income countries. We need to make sure that lag is in months, not decades.
What country has done a really good job in AI so far, you think, in terms of clarifying the playing field?
Well, to be honest, the field of AI is so nascent and fast moving, there aren't really the great model. Nobody has an AI model of we've scaled up basic education in a way that we know is transformative. But literally just last week, I was learning from our team some trials we've done at significant scale. We're talking millions of students. These have taken place in a couple of Indian states with a partnership we have with the Central Square Foundation there, which has actually shown learning effect sizes on numeracy and literacy in very low resource settings of an increase of up to a year, sometimes 2 years of learning outcomes. Those tools are now ready. Now we have those to start being scaled up, and we're working with partners in Africa and elsewhere. We're working with partners like the World Bank to take that up. So the moment is now. It's actually not, they're not great models of the last 2 or 3 years. We are at that very pivotal moment. People always say, this is a truly catalytic moment. This is a truly catalytic moment. We are at that cusp moment where we're just shifting from having the being able to use the languages, being able to have primary healthcare centers speak in local languages to local patients.
So India again, and he's not being flattering, I'm from Pakistan, just in case anyone is nervous about that. Last year in your annual letter, you called on the wealthy to give more money faster. Have they, yes or no?
Collectively, the wealthy, what I point out in my annual letter is even if the world overall got poorer during the pandemic, we had massive economic setbacks, there was one particular cohort on the planet who got much wealthier in the period 2019 to 2024, and that is the world's very wealthiest people, particularly billionaires. The number of billionaires grew across every continent and every country, and the wealth of existing billionaires grew. And so, obviously, working for Bill and Melinda Gates and Warren Buffett, who have been extraordinarily generous, and with a range of other partners, we feel one of our roles to say is that wealth could and should be used to provide opportunities to others. One of our core messages is where you're born shouldn't matter and shouldn't define whether you live or die or what opportunities you have. And so we've had some very encouraging examples. We hope to have more, but I don't think it's at the scale and range that is either possible or necessary yet.
More money from rich people is needed. Speaking of that, you mentioned Warren Buffett. Melinda Gates obviously recently stepped down as co-chair of the foundation. Shortly thereafter, Mr. Buffett, who had, I think, resigned as a Gates trustee a while back, made a $4 billion donation to the foundation and then told the Wall Street Journal that the Gates Foundation has no money coming from me after my death. What impact does that have on the foundation? He's obviously been a huge...
So for both Melinda and Warren, so both on Warren, what Warren has been incredibly generous from his original gift in 2007 is he made a commitment that during his lifetime, and he is now 94 and in amazing health, that he would be giving us annual payments of a portion of Berkshire Hathaway stock, and because he thought that the work we're doing is very powerful and impactful. And to date, he has given us the extraordinary total of $43 billion. It is the most generous contribution of one philanthropist to another in human history. And so we are incredibly grateful for that gift. We fully understand, and it's always been clear that his commitment was after his death, then his children are going to think through how the distribution of his estate, but he's still making sure that that is going to be earmarked for philanthropic pursuits. And so it hasn't really changed our model, but we wouldn't have been able to do what we've done without that incredible generosity from Warren.
Last question. Who is going to be the next Warren Buffett for you? Who do you have your eyes on as that perspective? Next $43 billion.
Well, I don't think for us. I would be lying if I said I think any other person is going to be giving us over $40 billion to spend directly. I think what we're much more interested in is seeing, can we deliver partnerships? Can we show the power of philanthropic partnerships where you can crowd in a range of leaders, and actually we have some incredible leaders and partners from all over the world. We work with Aliko Dangote in Africa and a range of health interventions, especially in northern Nigeria and West Africa. We work with philanthropists in India. We work with philanthropists in Pakistan, across the world, and we say what there are incredible partnerships. We actually highlighted one last night as part of a thing which we've launched. I'll do it as an encouragement to anyone in the room who would like to. There is an amazing new fund hosted by UNICEF called the Child Nutrition Fund, which we're partnering in, other philanthropists are partnering in, governments that can scale up interventions now that will save literally millions of lives. So it's about crowding in a healthy set of partnerships rather than giving more money to the Gates Foundation. We have a lot.
You have a lot. And so it's not going to be Elon Musk, just to clear that up.
Well, we're open. We
Okay.
really don't mind if whoever comes in with philanthropy. We just believe that the primary and most important role of philanthropy is trying to help generate human opportunity.
Right.
And giving back and providing that platform for people who otherwise wouldn't have it.
Be a catalyst. Thank you so much, Mark.
Great.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.